Hey, thanks so much for supporting our program. This is about banking, and it's a little wonky, but I think it's really important stuff that you need to know and understand. Banks have something called reserve requirements. It's the amount of money that they have to keep in the vault, essentially, out of the money that you give them when you put money into a checking or savings account. The amount of that they have to keep as opposed to loaning out and making money on. You put $100 into the bank takes $90 and they loan it out. They're paying you, say, 1% interest. They loan it out on a credit card as high as 29% interest. That's how one of the ways that banks make their profits. The reserve requirement right now for banks that have more than $125 million in assets, which is pretty much all banks, is 10%. So if you put $100 into a bank, they have to keep $10 in that bank out of that 100 in case there's a run on the bank, in case everybody, the economy goes south and everybody says, I want my money back. And the assumption is it's never going to be more than 10% of all the people, who want all their money back. So the bank will be okay. There won't be a run on the bank. It won't collapse like they did in the 1920s, 1929, if they keep a reserve of 10%. So fix that in your mind as you listen to this report about Freddie and Fannie. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are these two giant corporations that were privatized some years ago, and as we went into the 2008 crash, they collapsed. They back mortgages in the United States to the tune of $5 to $6 trillion worth of mortgages. So the way it works is a bank writes a loan to you, a mortgage for your house, for example. They then, and when they do that, they basically buy insurance from Fannie or Freddie. And so if you fail to pay the bank, if you default, whatever the bank loses on that after they've sold your property, they can recover that from Fannie or Freddie. You with me so far? So you would think that Fannie and Freddie, basically acting as a bank or maybe in a kind of an insurance company / bank, would have their own reserve requirements. And they do. They actually do. But here's where it gets wild. This is what Senator John Kennedy, the Republican from Louisiana, he said this whole thing is a car wreck. It's a dumpster fire in a hearing recently. What he was talking about is the fact that Fannie and Freddie right now are guaranteeing $5.5 trillion worth of mortgages. And their reserve requirement is 19 cents on every $100. Now remember, banks, it's $10 on every $100. For Freddie and Fannie, it's 19 cents on every $100. Now, in 2008, when Fannie and Freddie, when so many mortgages were going south, Fannie and Freddie had to, kick in and keep the banks from going down. They couldn't do that. And so you and I had to spend $190 billion in taxpayer money, basically giving that money to Fannie and Freddie, saying, here you go. And we sort of unprivatized them for a while in the process of doing that. But back then, they had to hold 45 cents on every $100. Today, it's 19 cents on every $100, meaning they're even more undercapitalized. They have a worse capital relationship, a worse reserve relationship, with the banks that they're backstopping, the mortgages that they're backstopping, than they did in 2008. It looks to me like almost 3 times worse. And, Congress is holding hearings on this, and as I said, Senator John Kennedy said this is a dumpster fire, it's a car wreck. If the economy goes south badly, and if mortgages go south with it, as at the very moment right now that the Trump administration is trying to fully privatize Fannie and Freddie, give it to Wall Street, and not change that reserve requirement, they're setting up another 2008. This is insane. I realize there's a lot of technical minutia there. You may have to watch this once or twice to get it. I probably didn't do the very best job I could of explaining it, but I think this is a big deal that we all need to keep an eye on. And we need, if you have any, when you call your members of Congress, tell them don't privatize Fannie and Freddie and increase their reserve requirements. Thanks so much for watching.